You know that specific type of hunger where your stomach isn't just empty, it's actively trying to digest your own spine? That was me. That was my existence. I had just finished a 14-hour fast for a routine physical that involved way too many needles, and a doctor who looked at my cholesterol levels with the kind of disappointment usually reserved for a son who drops out of law school to become a mime. "You need to watch your intake, Jack," Dr. Evans had said, clicking his pen. "Maybe a salad now and then?" I nodded, smiled, pulled up my pants, and immediately decided that Evans could take his medical advice and shove it. I was a 32-year-old software engineer. I spent my days debugging code that held the fabric of mid-sized e-commerce logistics together. I had earned a cheat meal. No, not a meal, a feast, a gastronomic event. As soon as I got into my car in the hospital parking lot, I opened the DoorDash app. I didn't even need to browse. I knew exactly what I wanted. I went straight to Big Bubba's Smokehouse. This place didn't serve food. They served heart attacks on paper plates, and God, I was ready to flatline. I ordered the Barnyard Apocalypse. It was a platter designed for a family of 4 or one extremely depressed lineman. Half a rack of St. Louis ribs, slathered in a molasses-based BBQ sauce, so thick it had its own gravitational pull. A half-pound of brisket, smoked for 16 hours until it fell apart if you looked at it too hard. A side of jalapeno mac and cheese, cornbread muffins the size of softballs, and a large banana pudding. Total cost with tip? $68. Emotional value? Priceless. I drove home, my stomach making noises that sounded like a heavy metal drum solo. I got to my house, a nice little single-story place in a subdivision called Oak Haven Estates. It was one of those neighborhoods where the grass is always cut to precisely 2 inches. And if you leave your trash can out past 6:00 p.m. on a Tuesday, you get a passive-aggressive note taped to your door. I parked, went inside, and changed into my eating pants. You know the ones. Gray sweatpants, loose elastic, a slight stain on the left thigh from a pizza incident in 2019. I set up my command center on the coffee table, a roll of paper towels, a fresh bottle of Coke, and the TV remote queued up to a Godzilla movie marathon. I checked the app. Dasher. Mike. Status. Approaching. I watched the little car icon on the map turn onto my street. My heart actually fluttered. I'm not ashamed to admit that I felt more affection for Mike the Dasher in that moment than I had for any romantic partner in the last 5 years. I waited for the doorbell. I waited and waited. Then my phone buzzed. A notification from DoorDash. "Order delivered. Enjoy your meal, Jack." I frowned. I hadn't heard the bell. I hadn't heard a knock. But sometimes they just drop it and run, ninja style. I respected the hustle. And I launched, myself off the couch, sprinting to the front door with the agility of an Olympic athlete, yanked it open, and looked down. Nothing. Just my welcome mat, looking sadly empty. I stepped out onto the porch. I looked left. I looked right. I looked behind the decorative planter I'd bought at Target to make the place look like adults lived here. Nothing. No bag. No smell of hickory smoke. "Mike?" I whispered to the wind. "Mike, you betrayer." I pulled my phone out. I looked at the proof of delivery photo. It was a blurry picture of a brown paper bag sitting right there on my specific doormat with my specific peeling paint on the doorframe. Mike hadn't lied. He had delivered it. So where the hell was my brisket? Then I remembered. The Ring camera. I fumbled with the app, my blood sugar crashing so hard I was seeing spots. I pulled up the front door view and scrolled back 2 minutes. I saw Mike drop the bag. He took the photo, gave a little wave to the camera, good guy, Mike, and walked back to his car. The video counter ticked forward 30 seconds. The frame was empty. The bag sat there, steaming in the cool autumn air. It was beautiful. Then, movement from the right side of the screen. A figure entered the frame. A figure I knew all too well. Brenda. Brenda lived next door. Brenda was the president of the Oak Haven Homeowners Association. Brenda was a woman who once measured the distance between my mailbox and the curb with a laser ruler because she suspected it was 3 inches non-compliant. She was in her late 50s, built like a fire hydrant, with a haircut that defied physics. Short, spiky, and blonde in the front, dark in the back. The "Can I speak to your manager" mullet. On the video, Brenda wasn't wearing her usual HOA vest. She was wearing a floral muumuu that looked like someone had skinned a sofa. She waddled into the frame, her head on a swivel, checking the street. She looked at my front window. She looked at the street. Then, with a speed that shouldn't have been possible for a woman who claimed to have bad knees whenever we had a neighborhood cleanup day, she swooped. She snatched the bag. She hugged the bag to her chest. She scurried back off-screen to the right, toward her house. I stared at the phone. My brain couldn't process it. It wasn't a porch pirate looking for Amazon electronics to pawn. It was my neighbor. My neighbor who drove a Lexus and lectured me about property values had just stolen my $68 BBQ feast. The hunger vanished, replaced instantly by a cold, white-hot fury. I didn't think. I didn't plan. I marched out of my house, barefoot, still in my gray sweatpants, and stormed across the 10 feet of manicured lawn that separated our driveways. I stomped up her porch steps. Her porch was cluttered with live, laugh, love signs and ceramic frogs. I pounded on her door. Bang, bang, bang. "Brenda, I know you're in there." Silence. I pounded again. "Brenda, open the door. I have you on camera." I heard shuffling. The peephole darkened. A latch clicked, then another. Then a chain rattled. The door opened 3 inches. Brenda's face appeared. She looked annoyed, but also flushed. And there was something else. A smell wafted out. Hickory smoke, sweet molasses. My brisket. "Jack?" she said, her voice dripping with fake concern. "What on earth are you doing banging on my door like a maniac? It's 6:30. Some of us are trying to have a peaceful evening." "You stole my food," I said, my voice shaking. "You just walked onto my porch and took my DoorDash order." Brenda blinked. Her eyes widened in performative shock. "Excuse me? I did no such thing. The accusation. I have my own dinner cooking, thank you very much. A vegan casserole." "A vegan casserole?" I asked. "Yes. Now please, get off my property before I call the police for harassment." "Brenda," I said, pointing a trembling finger at her face. "Open the door." "No." "Brenda, look at your chin." She froze. "What?" "Your chin. The left side." She instinctively brought a hand up to her face. She wiped it. Her fingers came away stained with a dark, reddish-brown glaze. My glaze. The proprietary spicy molasses blend from Big Bubba's. I stared at her finger. She stared at her finger. For a second, I thought she would fold. I thought she would say, "Okay, Jack, you caught me. I have a problem. I just love ribs." And honestly, if she had done that, if she had shown an ounce of humanity, I might have let it go. I might have just asked for my money back. But Brenda didn't do humanity. Brenda did gaslighting. She looked at the BBQ sauce on her fingers, then looked me dead in the eye and said, "It's a facial mask. Dead sea mud. For my pores." "It smells like liquid smoke, Brenda," I shouted. "And I can hear the TV. Is that Judge Judy? And is that the sound of someone chewing?" "My husband is eating celery," she shrieked. "Get away from me. You're erratic. You're probably on drugs. I'm putting this in the HOA newsletter." She slammed the door in my face. I heard the deadbolt slide home. I stood there on her porch, staring at the wood grain, listening to the muffled sound of my TV show and the distinct crunch of my cornbread. I walked back to my house. I was vibrating. I went inside and sat on my couch. The empty spot on the table where the food should have been mocked me. Step 1. Documentation. I saved the Ring video. I downloaded it to my phone, my computer, and the cloud. I emailed a copy to myself. Step 2. The police. I dialed the non-emergency line. I knew it was a long shot, but theft is theft, right? "County Dispatch, Officer Miller speaking." "Hi," I said, trying to sound calm. "I'd like to report a theft. My neighbor just stole a food delivery off my porch." "Okay," the officer said, sounding like he was midway through a crossword puzzle. "Did you see her take it?" "Yes, I have it on video. Clear as day. She walked over, took the bag, and went back inside. I just confronted her, and she has BBQ sauce on her face." "Okay. What was the value of the items?" $68. There was a long pause. "Sir, I can send a patrol car out when one becomes available, but if she's inside her home and refuses to answer, we can't kick the door down for a side of ribs." "It was a full rack," I corrected. "And brisket." "Right. Look, without her confessing or us finding the evidence in plain view, it's a he said, she said situation with a video of a woman picking up a bag. She could claim it was her bag delivered to the wrong house. It's a civil matter. You can take her to small claims court." "Small claims court?" I laughed, a dry, hysterical sound. "For $60? It'll cost me more to file the paperwork." "I don't make the laws, sir. Do you want me to file a report for insurance?" "No," I sighed. "No, thank you, officer." I hung up. Step 3. DoorDash. I opened the support chat. "Bot. I'm sorry to hear you didn't receive your order. Let's get that fixed." It took 20 minutes of arguing with an AI, and then a human named Steve, who was definitely also an AI. But eventually I got a full refund and a $5 credit. "Great," I said to the empty room. "I have my money back, but Big Bubba's closes in 10 minutes. I checked the app. Big Bubba's Smokehouse, currently unavailable. I was defeated. I went to the kitchen and opened the pantry. A box of stale crackers, a can of tuna, a jar of peanut butter. I sat on the kitchen floor, eating a spoon of peanut butter, watching the Ring footage on loop. Waddle. Snatch. Run, waddle. Snatch, run. The injustice of it gnawed at me more than the hunger. It wasn't about the food anymore. It was about the violation. It was about the social contract. We live in a society. You don't steal a man's brisket. And Brenda? She was probably licking her fingers right now. She was probably wiping her mouth with one of those extra napkins I always ask for. She was winning. I went to the window and looked at her house. The lights were on in the living room. I could see the silhouette of her head on the recliner. "You think this is over, Brenda?" I whispered, smearing peanut butter on a cracker with aggressive force. "You think you can just eat my ribs and hide behind your door chain?" My stomach growled, a low, rumbling war cry. I needed a plan. I needed something that wouldn't just get me my money back, I already had that. I needed something that would hurt. Not physically, I wasn't a monster, but spiritually. I needed to shatter her trust in the very concept of free food. I thought about what she had done. She saw a bag. She assumed it was delicious. She took it. It was a crime of opportunity fueled by gluttony. I needed to use that against her. I remembered something. A few weeks ago, I had seen a bakery delivery truck drop off a box at her place. Sugar Mama's pastries. She had posted it on her Facebook. We were friends, purely for surveillance purposes. Nothing beats a glazed donut with my morning coffee. # blessed, art self-care. Brenda had a sweet tooth. A dark, twisted idea began to form in my mind. It started small, maybe a box of donuts with salt instead of sugar. No, too amateur. I looked at the bathroom down the hall. My eyes landed on the tube of toothpaste by the sink. Classic white paste. Minty. Gritty. I looked at the fridge. The jar of mayonnaise. Thick, creamy, oily. I imagined the texture. The initial bite of a glazed donut. The soft, pillowy dough. The shatter of the sugar glaze. And then, the filling. Your brain expects Bavarian cream. Your brain expects raspberry jelly. Your brain does not expect full-fat Hellmann's mixed with Colgate Total and a dash of… what else? I opened the fridge door and scanned the shelves. My eyes landed on the bottle of Satan's Blood hot sauce I'd bought as a gag gift and never opened. Ghost pepper extract. 800,000 Scoville units. Just a drop. Just enough to provide a lingering warmth. A reminder. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. If Dr. Evans could see me now, he'd probably be worried about my blood pressure, but for the first time all day, I didn't feel hungry. I felt inspired. I grabbed my keys. The grocery store was open 24 hours. Hold on, Brenda, I muttered, grabbing my wallet. Dessert is coming. Section 2. The Glazed Trojan Horse. The fluorescent lights of the 24-hour Kroger at 11 o'clock p.m. are a liminal space. It's where society's outliers gather. The insomniacs, the stoners, the shift workers, and me, a man on a mission of vengeance. I pushed my cart with purpose. I didn't need much, but I needed specifics. First stop, the bakery. I needed the bait to be irresistible. I couldn't use the cheap, plastic container donuts from the aisle. Brenda was a connoisseur. She had high-value targets. I went to the fresh case. Although the bakery staff had gone home, there were still a few boxes of the premium glazed left. I checked the date. Today, perfect. I bought a dozen. They were golden, sticky, and smelled like happiness. Second stop, the condiment aisle. I stood in front of the mayonnaise. I didn't want the light stuff. I didn't want the olive oil blend. I wanted the heavy, gelatinous, egg yolk-rich industrial sludge. I grabbed the largest jar of the generic store brand. Real mayonnaise, the label claimed. It looked like spackle. Into the cart. Third stop, dental hygiene. I needed a flavor profile that would clash violently with the mayo. Fruity toothpaste might blend too well with the sugar. Cinnamon was too distinct. I needed mint. Aggressive, medicinal mint. I grabbed a 3-pack of Arctic Blast whitening paste. The box promised a tingling sensation. Oh, she was going to tingle all right. I checked out. The cashier, a teenager with headphones around his neck, scanned the donuts, the gallon of mayo, and the 3 tubes of toothpaste. He paused. He looked at the items. He looked at me. Big night? He asked. You have no idea, I said deadpan. I drove home, the supplies rattling in the passenger seat like munitions. Back in my kitchen, I cleared the counter. I felt like Walter White, but instead of meth, I was cooking up gastronomic trauma. I laid out the tools, the box of donuts, a large mixing bowl, a turkey baster. I didn't have a pastry bag, but this would do. A chopstick for creating the entry wound. A small knife. I opened the mayo. The smell hit me. Tangy, fatty. I scooped about 2 cups into the bowl. Then I uncapped the toothpaste. I squeezed all 3 tubes into the mayo. The stark white paste swirled with the creamy off-white mayo. It was mesmerizing. I began to mix. The smell was confusing. It smelled like a sandwich that had brushed its teeth. It was repulsive. Then, the secret ingredient, the Satan's blood. I carefully used a dropper. 1 drop. 2 drops. 3. I stirred it in. The mixture didn't change color. It remained a deceptive, innocent white cream. Now for the surgery. I took the first donut. It was a beautiful yeast ring. I couldn't fill a ring donut easily, so I had bought the shells, the ones usually filled with raspberry or lemon, but these were the unfilled sugar buns the bakery sold for people who wanted to add their own toppings. I used the chopstick to poke a hole in the side of the donut. I wiggled it around inside, creating a cavity, pushing the fluffy dough aside to make room for the payload. I sucked up the mint mayo pepper slurry into the turkey baster. I inserted the tip into the donut. Squelch. I squeezed the bulb. The donut grew heavier in my hand. It swelled slightly, pregnant with vengeance. I stopped just before it overflowed. I repeated the process. One by one, the 12 donuts were transformed from sweet treats into biological weapons. When I was done, I had a problem. The injection holes were visible. A small smear of white goo was leaking from the side of each one. Brenda was nosy. She might inspect them. I mixed a little powdered sugar and water in a cup to make a quick glaze. I carefully dabbed it over the holes, sealing them shut. They looked seamless. I placed them back in the box. I arranged them in neat rows. They looked delicious. They smelled like sugar. You had to get within 2 inches to smell the mint, and by then, it would be too late. Now, the delivery system. I couldn't just leave a Kroger box. That looked like groceries. I dug through my recycling bin and found a fancy paper bag from a local boutique bakery called La Petite Crème that I'd bought a croissant from weeks ago. It was heavy stock paper with gold lettering. I slid the box into the bag. I went to my computer and opened Word. I typed out a note in a fancy cursive font. Hi, Jack. We noticed you're a loyal customer, and we had some extras from a corporate catering event. Thought you might enjoy these, on the house. The team at La Petite Crème. It was perfect. It explained why it was free, why it was on my porch, and why it was addressed to me. I checked the time. 1:00 a.m. Too early. Brenda slept like the dead, I assumed, based on her lack of conscience. The prime hunting time was mid-morning. The 11sies, I went to bed, but I didn't sleep well. I dreamt of giant donuts chasing me through a courthouse. I woke up at 9:00 a.m. I was still groggy, but the adrenaline kicked in fast. I made coffee. I checked the street. Brenda's car was in the driveway. She was home. I prepared the stage. I took the bag. I walked out my front door. I made a show of checking my phone, looking confused, then looking at the bag. I set it down on my porch, right in the sweet spot, visible from the street, but clearly on my property. I went back inside. Now, the waiting game. I set up my viewing station, I pulled the blinds in the living room down, leaving just a sliver open at the bottom. I dragged a chair over. I had my coffee. I had my phone recording the Ring camera feed live. 10:00 a.m. Nothing. A squirrel investigated the bag, but lost interest. Smart squirrel. 10:45 a.m. The mailman came. He dropped some letters in my box, looked at the bag, read the note, shrugged, and kept walking. Good man. He valued his job. 11:15 a.m. Movement. The front door of the neighbor's house opened. Brenda emerged. She was wearing a pink tracksuit today. She looked like a giant stick of bubblegum. She walked to her mailbox. She moved slowly, checking the neighborhood. She was scanning for targets. She grabbed her mail. She turned to go back inside. Then, she stopped. Her head snapped toward my porch. She had spotted the gold lettering of the La Petite Crème bag. It glinted in the sunlight. I held my breath. "Come on, Brenda," I whispered. "You know you want it." She looked at my house. She looked at my car. She took a step toward her door, then hesitated. She looked back at the bag. The greed was battling the fear. But Brenda didn't fear consequences. She had gotten away with the BBQ ribs. In her mind, she was invincible. She was the apex predator of the cul-de-sac. She did the stroll. It's a specific walk thieves do, where they pretend to be admiring the landscaping while closing the distance to the target. She stopped at the edge of my lawn. She looked up and down the street. Coast was clear. She darted. She was fast. Faster than yesterday. She was learning. She ran up my walkway, snatched the bag by the handles, and didn't even look at the note. She just grabbed and pivoted. As she turned, the bag swung, and I saw a smile on her face, a genuine ear-to-ear grin of triumph. She practically skipped back to her house. "Gotcha," I said. I grabbed my phone and switched from the Ring app to the live feed of a small, battery-operated GoPro I had hidden in my own flower bed, pointed directly at her porch. Brenda didn't go inside. It was a nice day. She sat down on her front porch swing. This was it, the main event. She placed the bag on her lap. She reached in and pulled out the box. She opened the lid. Even from across the yard, through a camera lens, I could see her eyes light up. She picked up the biggest donut, the one I had affectionately named Patient Zero. She held it up to the light. She admired the glaze. She opened her mouth, like a python unhinging its jaw to swallow a capybara. She took a massive bite. Nearly half the donut disappeared. I leaned forward, my nose touching the window glass. Chew, chew. Pause. The reaction was instantaneous. First, confusion. Her chewing slowed, her brow furrowed. Then, realization. Her eyes bulged. Then, rejection. She didn't just spit it out. She projected it. A spray of white goo and half-chewed dough erupted from her mouth like a geyser. Blarry! I heard it through the glass. It was a guttural, primal sound. She dropped the rest of the donut. She stood up, clawing at her tongue. The mint was hitting her. The mayo was coating her throat. And right about now, the ghost pepper should be saying hello. She started coughing, hacking. She grabbed the porch railing. She was scraping her tongue with her fingers. "Water!" I heard her scream. "Fire! Poison!" She kicked the box of donuts. It flew off the porch, scattering the remaining traps into her azaleas. She ran inside, slamming the door. I fell off my chair. I was laughing so hard I couldn't breathe. I was rolling on the floor, clutching my stomach. It was mean. It was petty. It was childish. And it was the greatest moment of my life. I laid there for a good 5 minutes, just letting the endorphins wash over me. I had won. Justice had been served, and it tasted like minty mayo. But the victory lap was short-lived. 10 minutes later, I heard sirens. Not the distant sirens of the city. The close, approaching wail of emergency services. I pulled myself up and looked out the window. A police cruiser screeched around the corner. Then another. Then an ambulance. They all pulled up to Brenda's house. My stomach dropped. 2 officers jumped out. EMTs rushed to her door with a stretcher. "Oh God," I whispered. "Did I kill her? Was she allergic to mayo? Is toothpaste lethal in large doses?" I watched as Brenda stumbled out of her house. She wasn't dying. She was screaming. She was pointing at my house. "He poisoned me!" she shrieked, her voice raspy. Probably the ghost pepper. "That man tried to kill me with chemicals." The officers looked at where she was pointing. They looked at my house. One of the officers, Officer Miller, the same guy I had spoken to on the phone yesterday, started walking across the lawn toward my front door. His hand was resting on his belt. He didn't look amused. I swallowed hard. The prank war had just turned into a criminal investigation. I opened the door before he could knock. "Officer Miller," I said, trying to look like I hadn't just been laughing maniacally on the floor. "Is everything okay?" He looked at me. He looked at the empty spot on my porch. He looked back at Brenda, who was currently chugging a bottle of water an EMT had given her while making gagging noises. "Sir," Miller sighed, sounding infinitely weary. "Your neighbor claims you tried to poison her. She says she ate a donut from your porch and it burned her mouth and tasted like cleaning supplies?" "Oh, the donuts," I said, feigning surprise. "Yes, I ordered those for myself. Special keto diet ones. Or, wait." I paused for dramatic effect. "Why was she eating my donuts?" Miller stared at me. He knew. I could see it in his eyes. He knew exactly what had happened. "She says you left them there as a trap," Miller said. "Officer," I said, leaning against the doorframe. "I left a package on my own property, addressed to me. If someone comes onto my porch and steals my food, am I liable for them not liking the flavor profile? I personally love the zesty kick of mint and mayonnaise. It cleans your teeth while you eat. Very efficient." Miller bit the inside of his cheek. He was fighting a smile. He turned back to look at Brenda, who was now yelling at the EMTs that her tongue was numb. "She stole the package?" Miller asked quietly. "Caught it on 4K video," I said. "Just like the ribs yesterday. Would you like to see?" Miller shook his head. "No, that won't be necessary." He turned around. "Stay here." He walked back to Brenda. I couldn't hear everything, but I heard snippets. "Committed theft, ma'am. Cannot press charges for food you stole. Waste of emergency resources." Brenda went silent. She looked from Miller to me. Her face turned a color of red that matched the ghost pepper sauce. She stormed back into her house, slamming the door so hard her "Live, Laugh, Love" sign fell off the wall. Miller walked back to his car. He caught my eye. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. But he gave me a slow, singular nod. The cops left. The ambulance left. I stood on my porch, victorious. But I knew Brenda. This wasn't the end. This was just the inciting incident. I had humiliated her in front of the police and the neighbors. I had assaulted her taste buds. She wouldn't just take this lying down. She was going to unleash the full power of the homeowners association. And I needed to be ready. I looked at my empty porch. "I'm gonna need a bigger fence," I said to myself. I pulled out my phone and searched for local contractors. I needed someone who didn't care about permits, someone who hated HOAs as much as I did. I found a listing on Craigslist. Big Tony's Steel and Concrete. We build stuff that stays built. I hit dial. Section 3. The bite, the puke, and the police. Word count. Progress. We are roughly at 2,600 words covering Section 1 and part of Section 2. To hit the full 15,000 words, we need to significantly expand the detail of the war that follows. The next morning, the war began in earnest. I woke up to a piece of paper taped to my front door. It was bright orange. Notice of violation. Oak Haven Homeowners Association. Infraction, unapproved exterior modification, grease stain on porch. Fine, $50. Correction, required, immediate removal. I looked down. There was a tiny, microscopic smudge of mayonnaise on the concrete where the donut box had sat. She had come over in the night, probably with a magnifying glass to find it. I ripped the note down. Game on, Brenda. I waited for Big Tony. Tony arrived at 10 a.m. sharp in a truck that looked like it had survived a war zone. It was a Ford F-350, lifted, rusted, and covered in bumper stickers that said things like, "My other ride is your mom," and "Come and take it," with a picture of a nail gun. Tony hopped out. He was a mountain of a man. He wore a sleeveless shirt, work boots, and sunglasses that wrapped around his head. "You Jack," he grunted. "That's me," I said. "You said something about a Karen problem?" "The worst," I said. "She steals packages. She weaponizes the HOA. I need a solution." Tony looked at my porch. He looked at Brenda's house. He spit on the ground. "I hate HOAs," he said. "Last one tried to tell me I couldn't park my work truck in my own driveway because it was unsightly. I poured concrete into their community pool drain." I knew immediately I had found my soulmate. "Here's the plan, Tony," I said. "I don't just want a lockbox. I want a fortress. I want a steel cage bolted to the concrete that requires a thumbprint, a retinal scan, and a blood sacrifice to open. And I want it to look aggressive." Tony grinned. "I can do aggressive. We got some leftover steel plating from a bank job. We can weld you a secure delivery receptacle. Bolt it down with industrial anchors. She tries to move it, she'll tear the porch off the house." "Perfect," I said. "But there's a catch. The HOA rules say all exterior additions must be aesthetically harmonious with the home." Tony looked at my house, beige siding. He looked at the steel plating in his truck, industrial gray. "I got a can of beige spray paint," he said. "We'll make it harmonious." We got to work. Or rather, Tony got to work. I mostly stood around holding tools and feeling inadequate while Tony wielded a welding torch like a paintbrush. The noise was incredible. The grinding of metal, the pounding of hammers. Brenda came out within 5 minutes. "What is going on here?" she shrieked from her lawn. "You can't do construction on a Sunday." Tony lifted his welding mask. He looked at her. He didn't say a word. He just revved his angle grinder. Brenda covered her ears and retreated. By noon, it was done. It was hideous. It was a 3-foot by 3-foot steel cube bolted to the concrete next to my door. It had a heavy lid with a keypad lock. Tony had spray painted it. Beige, but the paint was dripping, and it looked like a camouflage bunker. "That," Tony said, slapping the lid, "ain't going nowhere, and neither are your packages." "It's beautiful," I said. "That'll be $800. Worth every penny." I paid Tony. He drove off, leaving a cloud of diesel smoke that drifted directly into Brenda's open windows. I went inside and set up the code for the box. I added the instructions to my DoorDash and Amazon profiles. Put package in the beige box. Code is 1234. Close lid to lock. I felt secure. I felt safe. But I had underestimated the enemy. 2 days later, I came home from work to find another orange note. Notice of violation. Infraction. Unapproved structure. The box. Fine. 200 hundreds. Note. Structure exceeds dimension limits for decorative planters and is not an approved security device. Remove within 24 hours or face legal action. She had classified it as a planter to cite me. I stormed over to her house. I didn't knock. I just yelled from the sidewalk. "It's not a planter, Brenda. It's a security device because someone keeps stealing my stuff." She appeared at the window. She was smiling, a smug, tight-lipped smile. She opened the window. "Read the bylaws, Jack. Article 14, Section B. All security receptacles must be commercially available standard models. That monstrosity is custom fabrication. It's an eyesore. It goes." "It stays," I yelled. "Or I release the video of you vomiting mayonnaise on the internet." Her smile faltered for a second. "You wouldn't." "Try me. I'll title it HOA President's Minty Fresh Lunch. It'll go viral on TikTok. You'll be a meme, Brenda. The Mayo lady." She slammed the window shut. The next day, the fine was gone from my door. But the war wasn't over. She shifted tactics. If she couldn't remove the box, she would make my life hell in other ways. My trash can was 2 inches too far from the curb? Fine. My grass was a 1/4 inch too tall? Fine. I washed my car in the driveway? Fine. Apparently, runoff water is a biohazard. In 1 week, I racked up $600 in fines. I was bleeding money. I needed a nuke. I needed to end this. I called Tony again. "Tony," I said. "The box is holding, but she's flanking me. She's hitting me with the bylaws." "You need a distraction," Tony said. "You need to bait her into doing something so illegal that the HOA has to fire her." "Like what?" "Like breaking and entering," Tony said. "Or vandalism." "She won't break in. She's too cowardly." "Not if she thinks she's right," Tony said. "You said she's obsessed with the box, right? She hates it. She despises it." "So," Tony said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "we make the box the trap. We rig it." "Rig it with what? More mayo?" "No," Tony said. "Glitter and sound. High decibel sound. We make it so if she tries to tamper with it, if she tries to unscrew the bolts or pry it open, it goes off. We call it a anti-tamper alarm. Perfectly legal for security." "Tony," I said, "when can you be here?" Tony didn't just show up. He arrived like a tactical unit responding to a hostage crisis, if the hostage was a sense of suburban dignity and the crisis was a woman named Brenda. He pulled into my driveway the next morning at 8:00 a.m. His truck bed was loaded with equipment that looked suspiciously military grade for a guy who specialized in residential hardscaping. He had a spool of red wire, a compressed air tank, and a box labeled "Fun Stuff. Do Not Shake." "Morning, sunshine," Tony grunted, hoisting a toolbox that looked like it weighed more than my car. "Ready to violate some noise ordinances?" "I was born ready," I said, handing him a coffee. "What's in the box?" Tony grinned. It was a terrifying expression, mostly teeth and beard. "You know how glitter is the herpes of the craft world? Once you get it, you never get rid of it?" "Yeah? Well, I got my hands on 5 pounds of the industrial stuff. Microfine prismatic dust. It's small enough to get into your pores, Jack. It's small enough to bond with your DNA. If Brenda gets hit with this, her great-grandchildren are going to be born sparkly. Jesus, I whispered. Is it legal? Is it legal to put confetti in a box on your own property? Tony shrugged. It's a celebratory security feature. If someone unauthorized opens the maintenance panel without the key, surprise. Happy birthday. We spent the next 4 hours turning my ugly beige box into a weapon of mass distraction. The plan was simple, but diabolical. The box had the main lid for packages, which was code-locked. But Tony installed a fake service panel on the side. It was clearly labeled, Danger, High Voltage, Security System. Do not open. We knew Brenda. We knew her psychology. If you tell a Karen, do not enter, she reads it as VIP entrance. If you tell her, do not open, she assumes you're hiding something illegal that she needs to photograph for the HOA board. Behind that panel, Tony rigged the air tank to a canister filled with the glitter. And wired into the trigger was a siren. Not a standard car alarm. A klaxon. The kind they use on submarines when they're about to dive. Wooga, a wooga. 120 decibels, Tony said, wiring the battery. It'll rattle her fillings. We finished around noon. Tony packed up. Remember, he said, wiping grease on his jeans, you didn't hire me to booby-trap your neighbor. You hired me to install a theft deterrent system. If she triggers it, that's on her. It's like hopping a fence and getting mad at the barbed wire. You're a poet, Tony. I know. That'll be another 500. I paid the man. He was becoming the most expensive friend I had. But can you put a price on justice? No. I went inside. I posted a new sign on the box, right above the fake panel. A bright red sticker. Authorized personnel only. Tampering will. Trigger alarm. It was a dare. It was a gauntlet thrown at the feet of the HOA. I retreated to my command center. The blinds were drawn. The cameras were rolling. The snacks were staged. I didn't have to wait long. Brenda had been watching. She had seen Tony's truck. She had seen the welding. Her curiosity was eating her alive. She needed to know what was in the box. Was it a camera? Was it a meth lab? Was it a colony of invasive bats? At 2:30 p.m., the enemy emerged. She was carrying a clipboard. The clipboard is the shield of the suburban tyrant. It gives them authority. It says, I am not trespassing. I am inspecting. She walked down her driveway, paused at the property line, and scanned the area. She looked at my windows. I stayed perfectly still. She approached the box. She circled it like a shark circling a shipwreck. She tapped the steel with her pen. Clink, clink. Solid. She tried the main lid. Locked. She huffed, scribbling something furiously on her clipboard. Then she saw it. The side panel. The red warning sticker. I zoomed in with the camera. I could see the gears turning in her head. Authorized personnel only. I am the HOA president. I am the highest authority. She looked around again. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a screwdriver. Oh, Brenda, I whispered, clutching my bag of popcorn. You brought tools. That's intent. That's premeditation. She jammed the screwdriver into the seam of the fake panel. She pried. The metal groaned. She pushed harder. Her tongue poked out of the corner of her mouth in concentration. Pop! The panel gave way. The sequence of events that followed happened in less than a second. But in my memory, It plays out in glorious slow motion. First, the sound. Awooga! 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 It was deafening. It wasn't just a sound, it was a physical force. The windows of my house rattled. Birds took flight from 3 counties away. Brenda jumped. She didn't just jump. She achieved vertical lift. Her soul tried to leave her body. But gravity caught her, and as she stumbled back, the secondary payload deployed. Whoom! The compressed air tank released. The canister fired. A cloud of pink, silver, and gold glitter exploded outward from the panel. It wasn't a sprinkle. It was a blast radius. It hit her squarely in the chest and face. It covered her. She stood there for a split second, a shimmering disco ball statue of shock. Then she screamed, "Ah, my eyes, I'm blind! Help! Terrorism!" She flailed. She swatted at the air. She spun in circles, the siren still blaring awooga, awooga, like we were under attack by a U-boat. She tripped over her own feet and landed in my bushes. I hit the stop button on the siren remote I was holding. The silence that followed was heavy. Then the wailing began. "I'm sparkling! Get it off! Get it off!" I walked out the front door. I put on my best, concerned neighbor face. "Brenda!" I yelled, rushing over. "Oh my! God, are you okay? Did you try to service the security unit? I put a sign up. It's high voltage." She crawled out of the bush. She looked like she had lost a fight with a drag queen. Her hair was silver. Her face was pink. Her eyelashes were gold. "You!" she screeched, pointing a glittery finger at me. "You bombed me!" "Bombed you?" I gasped. "Brenda, that's the anti-theft marking system. It's designed to identify intruders. Why were you unscrewing my panel with a screwdriver?" "I was inspecting it for code violations," she yelled, spitting glitter. "With a screwdriver? On private property? Brenda, that looks like burglary tools to me." "I am calling the police," she screamed. "I am calling the FBI. I am calling the Navy SEALs." "Go ahead," I said, crossing my arms. "I'll wait." She stomped back to her house, leaving a trail of pixie dust on the sidewalk. The police arrived 20 minutes later. And wouldn't you know it? It was Officer Miller again. He pulled up to the curb. He stayed in his car for a full minute, head resting on the steering wheel. I saw him take a deep breath. He was questioning his life choices. He was wondering why he didn't become a firefighter. Firefighters don't deal with glitter. He got out. He walked up the driveway. He looked at the box. He looked at the glitter blast pattern on the concrete. He looked at the trail leading to Brenda's door. "Jack," he said. "Officer Miller," I said. "Jack, why does it look like a unicorn exploded on your lawn?" "Attempted break-in, officer," I said, handing him the USB drive I had already prepared. "Suspect attempted to dismantle my security system. The system deployed a non-lethal marking agent to identify the perpetrator." Miller took the USB drive. He looked at it. "A marking agent?" "Glitter," I admitted. "Microfine." He looked at Brenda's house. She was standing in her doorway. She had tried to wash it off, but water just spreads glitter. She now looked like a wet, angry disco ball. Miller walked over to her. I couldn't hear the conversation, but I saw the hand gestures. Brenda pointed at me. Miller pointed at the "No Trespassing" sign. Brenda pointed at her face. Miller pointed at the screwdriver she was still holding. Miller walked back to me. "Jack," he said, his voice low. "Yes, sir?" "Is that a submarine dive horn?" "It's a distinct auditory warning device, yes." "Is it over the decibel limit for a residential zone?" "Only if sustained for more than 30 seconds. It ran for 6. Miller stared at me. The corner of his mouth twitched. "Technically," he said, "you're within your rights to protect your property. And since she admitted to trying to open the panel, she's admitting to tampering." Exactly. However, Miller said, leaning in, if I have to come back here one more time, Jack, I'm going to find a reason to cite you for disturbing the peace. Do we understand each other? Crystal clear, officer. Good. And, Jack? Yeah? Nice shot. He got back in his car and left. I thought I had won. I thought this was the checkmate. But I forgot one thing. Brenda wasn't just a neighbor. She was an institution. And institutions have lawyers. 2 days later, I received a letter. Not a sticky note. A certified letter on heavy bond paper from the law firm of Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe. Okay, it was Smith, Wesson, and Karen, but you get the idea. Cease and desist. Demand for damages. Client, Brenda Higgins. Claim, intentional infliction of emotional distress, assault with chemical agents, glitter, noise trauma, damage to reputation. Demand, immediate removal of the security box, a written public apology, and $5,000 in medical bills for glitter inhalation therapy. I stared at the letter. $5,000? For glitter inhalation? I called my brother, Mark. Mark isn't a lawyer, but he dates a paralegal, which in my book makes him qualified. Ignore it, Mark said. It's a scare tactic. Unless she actually sues you, it's just paper. She's threatening to sue the HOA too, I said, reading further. She claims the HOA failed to protect her from a known hostile element, me. Okay, Mark said. That's actually good. If she sues the HOA, she's suing her own neighbors. That's not going to make her popular. He was right. I decided to double down. I didn't remove the box. I decorated it. I put a small potted plant on top of it. A cactus. Prickly, uninviting, and resilient. Then I went to the offensive. I printed flyers. Warning: porch pirates active in Oakhaven. I included a screenshot from the first video, Brenda stealing the BBQ. I blurred her face just enough to avoid libel, but everyone knew that haircut. Everyone knew that floral moo-moo. I put the flyers in every mailbox on the street. The neighborhood group chat exploded. Neighbor 1. Is that Brenda? Neighbor 2. OMG, my Amazon package went missing last week. I thought it was kids. Neighbor 3. Wait, she fined me for my trash cans, but she's stealing ribs? The tide was turning. The villagers were grabbing their pitchforks. But Brenda had one last card to play. The nuclear option. She called the city inspector, not the HOA. The city. She reported my house for unpermitted electrical work and hazardous structural modifications. I was working from home, coding a particularly boring logistics algorithm, when a white van pulled up. A guy in a hard hat and a safety vest walked up. He didn't look like Tony. He looked official. He looked like he had a clipboard and knew how to use it. Mr. Thompson? He asked. That's me. I'm Inspector Davis, City Building Code Enforcement. We received a report of an illegal high-voltage security installation and a non-compliant concrete structure. He looked at the box. Is that glitter? He asked, squinting at the pavement. Long story, I said. Look, it's just a lockbox. It's battery-powered. 12 volts, like a car, battery. The report says it's wired into the mains and poses a fire hazard. The report is a lie filed by a vindictive neighbor who stole my brisket, I said flatly. Davis blinked. Stole your brisket? And ribs. Man, Davis shook his head. People are crazy. Mind if I take a look? Be my guest. Just don't open the side panel labeled high voltage. Why? Because you'll look like a drag queen for a month, said Davis laughed. He checked the box. He measured it. He checked the voltage. This is fine, he said. It's barely a structure. It's basically a heavy appliance. No permit needed for a standalone battery unit. Can I get that in writing? Sure. He wrote me a certificate of no violation. I felt like framing it. As he was leaving, he pointed at Brenda's house. Is that the complainant? Yeah. You know, Davis said, scratching his chin. While I'm here, I notice her carport extension looks a little close to the property line. And that shed in the back? Looks like it exceeds the height limit. My ears perked up. Does it? Oh yeah, if I had to guess, I'd say that's unpermitted work. Be a shame if someone filed a formal inquiry. He winked. I grinned. What's the number for that inquiry line? The fallout from my call to the city was immediate and catastrophic for Brenda. Inspector Davis didn't just look at her shed. He looked at everything. It turned out the Queen of Rules didn't think the rules applied to her. Her sunroom addition? Unpermitted. Her electrical wiring for the hot tub? Fire hazard. Her fence? 6 inches onto city property. She was slapped with fines totaling $15,000 and given 30 days to demolish the shed and bring the sunroom up to code. But the final blow wasn't the city. It was the HOA. The annual meeting was held on a Tuesday night at the community center. Usually these meetings were attended by Brenda, the treasurer, her friend, and maybe one guy who just wanted free cookies. Tonight, it was standing room only. The flyers had done their work. The glitter bomb story had circulated. The rumors of her city fines were spreading like wildfire. I walked in. The room went quiet. Brenda sat at the head table. She was wearing dark sunglasses indoors. I assumed it was because her eyes were still sensitive from the glitter, or maybe she was trying to hide the shame. Order! She banged her gavel. Order! We have a lot to get through. First item, the issue of unsightly security boxes. Objection! Yelled Mrs. Gable from 3 houses down. Mrs. Gable was 80 years old and tough as nails. We're not here to talk about boxes, Brenda. We're here to talk about my missing knitting supplies. And my protein powder, shouted the gym bro from the corner. And my ribs, I added, raising my hand. This is out of order, Brenda shouted. You are all out of order. I move for a vote of no confidence, I yelled. The room gasped. This was a coup. You can't do that, Brenda stammered. I am the president. Not anymore, said the treasurer, a quiet man named Gary. He stood up. Brenda, I saw the video. Jack sent it to the board members. You stole the food. And you used HOA funds to buy that gavel. The room erupted. Embezzlement. Thief. Glitter face. Brenda stood up. She was trembling. She looked at the angry mob of neighbors. She looked at me, standing in the back, smiling. She slammed the gavel down one last time. It missed the strike plate and hit her water pitcher, knocking it over. Water spilled into her lap. It was the perfect slapstick ending to her reign of terror. I resign, she screamed. You people don't deserve me. I am moving to Florida. Good, I yelled. Take your shed with you. She stormed out. The room broke into applause. People were high-fiving. Mrs. Gable hugged me. Gary, the treasurer, shook my hand. So, Gary said, who wants to be the new president? The room instantly went silent. Everyone looked at their shoes. No one wanted the job. I nominate Jack, someone shouted. Whoa, whoa, I backed away. I'm not a politician. I'm just a guy who likes donuts. Epilogue. The sweet taste of victory. 3 months later. The moving van was parked in Brenda's driveway. She had sold the house. Apparently, paying the city fines and the legal fees was too much, and the social pariah status was the final straw. I sat on my porch. My security box was still there, but I had deactivated the siren. The glitter, however, was still visible in the cracks of the sidewalk. It sparkled in the afternoon sun, a permanent monument to the war. I had guests. Big Tony sat in a lawn chair, nursing a cold beer. Officer Miller, off duty, was sitting on the steps, eating a rib. Yes, I had done it. I had ordered the Barnyard Apocalypse from Big Bubba's again. The same order, the same price. This time, when the Dasher arrived, I was waiting. I tipped him $20. To justice, Tony said, raising his beer. To compliance, Miller said, raising a rib. To mayonnaise, I said, taking a bite of the brisket. It was perfect. The smoke, the fat, the spice. It tasted better than the first time. It tasted like freedom. We watched as Brenda walked out of her house for the last time. She was carrying a box of personal items. She looked tired, defeated. She looked over at us. 3 men eating BBQ, surrounded by the faint shimmer of glitter. She stopped. She glared. I raised a cornbread muffin in a toast. Safe travels, Brenda, I called out. Watch out for the porch pirates in Florida. She didn't say a word. She just got in her car and drove away. You know, Tony said, wiping sauce off his beard, I kind of feel bad for her. Florida has alligators. Yeah, I said, swallowing a delicious piece of pork. I hope they like spicy food, because she's pretty salty. We laughed. The sun set over Oak Haven Estates. The grass was cut. The trash cans were in, and my stomach was full. The war was over. But I kept the toothpaste and the ghost peppers in the pantry, just in case the new neighbors got any ideas.